Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the Joie de Vivre podcast. Today's guest is Sharon. It's a pleasure having you here today. First, we're going to start by talking a little bit more about yourself and what you're doing.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I am a licensed counselor and I am the owner of Oasis of Serenity Counseling and Consulting Services,
Mhm.
where I offer counseling as well as I am a personal development and marriage coach. I am married for 13 years. I have two sons. One is an adult, and I have a 12-year-old in the home with me. I am a certified John Maxwell coach, speaker, and trainer, as well as a Prepare Enrich couples assessment and skill building trainer as well. I am a former Marine. Well, I am a veteran
Okay.
and breast cancer survivor for the past 6 years. I've been breast cancer free.
That's
I
amazing.
am a woman of faith and active in my ministry at my local church. And that's
Very,
pretty much me in a nutshell.
very diverse background, and thank you so much for sharing. It's beautiful. So just to remind the audience, the focus of Joie de Vivre podcast is to talk about emotional and mental health. And you and I had a quick talk about how relationships can impact our lives. It can either take us to, a better future, or it can actually, cause us like some sort of like blockages in our life. So that's what we will be covering today. We will be talking about relationships and the impact of relationships in our lives. So, to get started, can you talk to us about your journey, like in the coaching field and the counseling field? How did you get to choose that, space?
Okay, and that's a great question. So, my personal development journey began after a divorce. I had been married for 10 years and we were having some struggles. And I was somewhat still young, in my opinion, mid late 20s, and wasn't quite sure what a healthy marriage was. Um, and I was pretty much naive, right? you know, um, I had some things about myself that I needed to work on, and I did not know that until I was actually in the relationship, and then those things began to surface. And so at that point, I had to like hold up the mirror, right, and look at myself. I look good on the outside according to the standards of society,
Yeah.
and realize that on the inside, I was not as beautiful or as attractive on the inside
Yeah.
um, as what they saw on the outside. And so I wanted that to match the
Okay.
inside and the outside. What's on the inside of us, it will come out through our language, our vocabulary, our actions. So I wanted that to match. So my self discovery journey began at that time. We end up divorcing. I did start some counseling for myself, as well as I started graduate school where I earned a master's degree in counseling. That graduate school within itself was therapy, really. One of my favorite classes was the class where we work as a group. We talk about our problems and we give each other suggestions and advice and feedback. And that within itself was part of my healing journey, part of me becoming the person that I am today. So that's kind of a snapshot of my personal development journey.
Wow, I mean, that's beautiful. So basically, you went through a challenge, but instead of you blaming the other part, you decided to focus on yourself and work on yourself to become a better person.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Because usually when we have like an unhealthy relationship, we tend to always like blame the other part, or like try to talk about all the things that we don't like about certain people. But the
Yeah.
reality is there is so much work to do within, like before we get to that level where we need to tell people that they need to work on this or this or that. So
That's exactly right. And I tell the couples that I work with that the best thing that they can do, the most important thing that they can do in their relationship, their marriage, is to work on themselves. Because that's the person you have control over. You have control over you,
yeah,
not your spouse, your mate. So
exactly.
uh,
And so
controlling us.
Yeah, and so what's the difference between a healthy relationship and healthy one? Like how can we actually how can we know? Like sometimes we notice something like it is going wrong, but we're not sure like if it's the relationship itself or it's something else.
Well, I think, oftentimes what happens is when we first enter into a relationship, most of the time we have a feeling
Mhm,
um, that lets us know that something's not quite right.
mhm,
The longer you go in that relationship, you begin to ignore what we call those flags, right?
mhm,
Some of those flags for an unhealthy relationship would be that you don't, you're kind of being controlled by that person.
mhm,
You're not able to be yourself fully. That person is trying to change you, right? There's a lot of arguing in that relationship. Um, there may be you being put down by that person, belittling. A lot of criticism
mhm.
happens in an unhealthy relationship. And so sometimes we excuse those things. But when you're in a healthy relationship, you feel excited to be around that person. It's not a drag on you emotionally, right? You're not emotionally drained by being around that person. You're
Mhm.
excited to see them. Um, you're not having to change or adjust who you are for that person. You're able to be your authentic self to show up that way in that relationship. There's good communication. You're able to express what your needs are in that relationship without having to feel like you're walking on eggshells. You're just able to be free to
It's more
express
natural.
yourself
Yeah, so you're more yourself versus like you're trying to wear a different hat. Um,
when
and
you're around
so
that person. Mhm.
yeah, so if we want to take a little break from like a marriage relationship and talking in general about like relationships in general, like friendship, family relationships, I get this question a lot from some of the people I work with and my friends as well. The toxic relationships or like some like of their friends or people around them that they didn't get to choose and they were put in their life by faith or by it's a family bound or something similar, and they're not bringing them joy or happiness, or they're making them I hate to say the word, kind of like miserable
Uh-huh.
when they're around them, but at the same time there's this love and there is this respect. And so what is a balanced way to like deal with this kind of situations? Because unfortunately certain people we cannot just like disconnect from completely, but meanwhile we can create some boundaries to protect ourselves and our mental well-being. So what would be like some of the tips to give people around about this?
Yeah, that's a good word, boundaries. I think of being assertive, being able to express openly what you like and what you don't like, being able to express what your needs are in that relationship with that person. Like I said before, being authentic um, and being able to express yourself openly. Sometimes in those situations you just mentioned to me, people can tend to hold back and not truly express themselves. But honesty is the hardest thing sometimes, but it is the best thing for most situations. Just be honest about how you're feeling.
Even if it might make the people like feel bad or like
That's
not be happy with you at that moment, but at least when it comes to yourself you're kind of like have a peace of mind.
That's exactly right. Part of being emotionally healthy
Mhm.
is eliminating some of the stress in your life. And a great way to eliminate stress is to truly express how you feel. That's assertive communication in all relationships.
And there's always like kind ways of saying things, right? We don't need to always hurt people or like even though some of us are extra sensitive, but there is always a way of like transferring the message without using those words that might you know hurt the other part.
Right. When you're communicating with that person, you want to be aware um, what they can handle and what they can't handle as far as communication. If they're, you said it may be easily hurt. So communication is like a gift. It's a gift that we're giving that other person,
Mhm.
and our hope is that other person will receive our beautifully wrapped gift. Right? We wrap it with our tone, with our words, our language. Um, if it's harsh or not, if it's soft. So we wrap our gift and we give it to that person, that gift of communication. We want them to receive it. So
Mhm.
when you're communicating, be mindful of your communication is a gift that you're giving to that person that you want that person to receive. And so you want to watch your packaging that you're giving that gift to that person.
Yeah. Yes, of course. And so when I joined the John Maxwell team, I was told that you have to pick the people that you're surrounding yourself with every day. Similar-minded people, especially when it comes to friends and colleagues. It's more easier to like it's like easier to pick the right person and or the right model. How do you go about doing that, like in your life?
I look for people that have values that are similar to mine. So we
Mhm.
want to have shared values. I look for people who affirm me, right? Who are supportive of me. I look for people who like to laugh and have fun. I look for people who are genuine. Um, I am a people watcher, so I may not talk a lot initially because
Okay.
I'm kind of watching and observing
Mhm.
how you're conducting yourself, how you're moving, how you're acting, to
Okay.
decide if you're someone that I can will be a good fit for me.
Mhm. Yes. So you do a little like, analysis before.
Yes. Hmm.
That's great. And so I want to talk a little bit about what you do, like your work and the motivation behind it. You work with couples and different kinds of peoples. You hear so many stories every day, and you try to come in with your expertise and knowledge to kind of help people unlock their problems or powers or whatever they're like looking for. How do you get the fuel to do that every day, and how do you go about doing it?
So I believe it's a passion for me. It's something that pulls me. Um, it puts a smile on my face, right? Even like during my sessions, I find myself sitting on the edge of my seat and leaning in to listen. That's how I know it's my passion. I think oftentimes our passions are birthed out of the struggles that we've had. I think I mentioned before being in that first marriage, not quite knowing what a healthy relationship was like, and so that first marriage, we didn't make it. We didn't make it, right? But I learned a lot. I evaluated experience. I look back at it. I learned some things from that relationship. And so I was able to apply those things into my work with the couples. But my passion is what drives me on the inside. It puts a smile on my face. It light up my eyes. Um, I
Yeah.
have a piece of contentment,
Okay.
happiness when I'm doing it, like I'm making a difference.
Okay. And that what gives you that daily motivation to keep going no matter how things can, sometimes you can wake up and have like a problem internally, but you still have to go and face people and
Yeah,
have a
that's
smile.
exactly right. Because it's something, the motivation comes from inside, but also outside, knowing that there are people who are counting on me to show up with a smile on my face, with a listening ear, and open mind to be there and be present for them. So that putting my focus on how am I going to be there to serve them that day, yes, it puts the pep in my step and gets me
Yes.
going.
Yeah, that's why it's very important to choose like what you're doing is your passion. It's not something that you're forced to do,
Yeah.
and so that gives you that natural fuel to keep going. Um, and so, how do relationships impact our lives? Um, like, can relationships impact how we think or who we are or who we can be in the future?
You're They most certainly can. Our relationships can affect us in a positive way or a negative way. Relationships can be emotionally exhausting
Mhm.
when you're around someone, especially someone that's a taker that doesn't give back to you, but they are constantly pulling and taking, needing things from you. They don't reciprocate. That can be an exhausting relationship and take a toll on you emotionally and can be stressful, right?
Mhm.
Um, Being around someone that's positive, that's encouraging. I think of the word mentor. a lot of mentors shape and mold and people to be the best version of themselves. So I think of the word mentor when you mention that.
Mhm.
We all need to have mentors, people that we aspire to be like, that have those common values that we have, that maybe a little bit further along than we are in our journey, that can share with us what their journey was and help us to get what we're trying to get to as well.
And so so we have to surround ourselves with, enough mentors and people that, that will give us that inspiration and that,
Right.
like,
Yes,
model to
like-minded
follow.
people. Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yep.
And so one last question I want to ask you is, how, like, if you can tell people today who are, struggling with relationships, or trying to kind of find the right fit for them, whether it's a partner or it's friend or it's something else, like, what are some of the steps they can take, to make sure that they're making the right decisions? And if someone is stuck and doesn't know what to do, what is the first thing they should do to get themselves out of that, stage?
Spend some time with them. Spend some time getting to know them, talking to that person. Um, those conversations need to be quality conversations. It's not so much about the frequency of the conversation, but the quality of those conversations. Going a little bit deeper than how was your day today, right? But asking those questions that really can let you know if this person is similar to me, if we have some similar values or not.
Yeah.
Um, that's what come to my mind initially. Um, being able to see how that person is when they're upset, like, really getting a view of how this person is when they don't get their way, when they're having a bad day, or they're sad, or if they're irritated, how do they act, right? Um,
How do they act in challenging times, not just the happy times?
yes, that's right. That's right. How they act during times that are challenging. Exactly right. Hmm.
Yeah, especially because with social media, like, it's so hard to, like, people are trying to make, friendships and complaining about people on the virtual world. And it's like, there's no way you can know that person, virtually, because, it's even harder sometimes in person, and until you get to that level, that deep level that you just mentioned, when you're trying to connect in with a person in all different, states, and kind of like understanding how they react and why they do things certain ways, and but if you just, like, look at things just from outside without going deep, it's just
Hmm.
so hard to connect, and think about, if it's the right fit or not, because and not all of us have that, like, what you have, that skill of, like, sitting and watching and observing. It's not given to everybody, so some people need to try harder to get there.
It takes time too. It really takes time to determine if the relationship is going to be a good relationship or not. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes work
Yeah.
um, yeah, on that. Even friendships, it takes work
Yeah.
to nurture those quality relationships.
Yeah, especially if you want them to last, and if you want to build some strong relationships, it doesn't happen without trying harder.
Right. And I think
Mhm.
it's important too to be willing to let people go. Once you realize it's not a good fit for you, it's
Yeah.
okay to let that person go. That there's what's that quote? People come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and everybody you meet may not be a lifetime friend, or
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. I mean, even if it hurts, it's better to do it that way than to get to some, routes that are not good for both sides. So
Right. Hmm.
yeah, and so finally, I want to close this with, how can you build a great relationship with yourself? Because we do spend a lot of time, trying to, learn about other people, or, like, being better, for others, doing this for this person. But, like, how can we also invest in our self friendship, I would call it.
Okay. Yeah. And the most important relationship that we're going to have is with ourselves. And
Yeah.
you're right, with ourselves majority of the time. Um, we want to like ourselves. And so when you think about a friendship,
Mhm.
uh, how do you treat that person? That's how you want to treat yourself. You want to be kind, you want to be loving, you want to be affirming, you want to be supportive, you want to be able to forgive yourself when you make mistakes, because we're not perfect, so we do make mistakes. Being able to forgive yourself, uh, being able to do those activities, what we call self-care, to take care of you, um, take care of your emotional health. When you love yourself, you're able to set boundaries. You're able to teach people how to treat you, right?
Yeah.
Because it's an investment.
Mhm.
Uh, Self-love is an investment in you. And when you put the focus on you become the best version of yourself in your relationships, how you show up, self-love is a key piece in being able to be the best version of yourself in those relationships.
Yeah, and it will become much easier when you get to that level, to attract the right people around you, because I notice when people complain about others being hard on them, most of the time they are actually hard on themselves, and
Yeah.
and they're attracting that same energy. So as you mentioned, being gentle and loving toward yourself will attract the right people, and you will need to do less work in that filtering
Yeah.
and finding the right fit for you.
And I think, the healthier you are, you're going to attract healthy people.
Mhm. And vice versa.
Yeah, and vice versa. That's exactly right.
Well, Sharon, it's a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for your time and your amazing, presentation. It was a pleasure. Hopefully, we'll see you another time in the podcast. Until then, stay healthy and happy. And thank you.
Thank you so much.